Hi, welcome back everyone to Educated Diaries. I'm Marie and I'm here with Chantel. Thanks for listening into our new exciting podcast, Finding the Right Childcare Centre for You.
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome back. Now, this is probably one of the first big decisions parents have to make, like when you have young children, because it's really the first time that lots of children, or lots of families, I should say, are going to leave their children with someone that they've never met before.
Oh, most definitely. We've both been through that. I was fortunate enough to have my own childcare centre where my children came to my centre, which was, that was a huge burden off my shoulders. But I know a lot of parents, have to go through the search and trying to find, and just like you did, you had to send your children.
Yeah, I remember looking around for somewhere like for Paris to go, and working in the childcare field, you think that, it's probably a bit easier, but it actually wasn't. But at least I sort of kind of knew what I was looking for in a centre. I was fortunate that I actually had met someone through the gym who was a director at a local childcare centre. So I already had that connection and comfort with her. So when I looked through the centre, I was happy with what I saw as well. So
it's so important too. Look, everyone's got their own view of what they think's best for their child. So, speaking to friends and family friends is all great, but at the end of the day, it's entirely up to you of making that decision that you feel in your heart. That's where your child best fits.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really a lot of families say, where do I start? Like, where do I even start to find the right centre? Because there are lots and lots of childcare centres out there. There's you've got community-based ones, you've got private centres, you've got council-run ones. And I know a lot of people have an opinion on all different ones, but we've obviously both come from the private sector and can say hand on heart that when we owned our services, it was through the love of children and caring for children that we provided that service.
Oh, most definitely. It was sort of, it's so important that, when you reach the stage of your life and you've got children, then you're ready to hand them over to someone, that decision that you make is so important and at the same time. But
I guess that's where you've sort of kind of got to look at, okay, where do I go to? Where do I find the information to even start? So I know there's, social media is a great thing. Like you said before, you can go and ask your friends. They will obviously have their own opinion because a lot of the times hopefully they love where they're going and they can tell you why they love it. I've seen many posts on social media on the mums groups pages asking for recommendations on centres. Again, that's a great source of information. However, lots of people will have their own bias and opinions and stuff like that. So sort of kind of it's also a good start because they might give you lots of positive things that you can go, you know what, yep, that's where I'm going to go and have a look at that centre or whatever as well.
That's exactly right. Yes, it's more or less, now with social media, it's a sort of, you've got your own directory there, straight at your fingertips, and you're going to be talking about some websites that you can go on and have a look at. But, from social groups on Facebook, from social media, different apps that are out now, which... there's actually really two great websites that you can get on as a parent and narrow down your search a little bit. So one is called Care for Kids and the other one is Toddle. So I was fortunate enough to have an email conversation with Emily Woods from Care for Kids, and she was saying that they're both now affiliated together. However, both websites bring different resources as well. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, so pretty much if you jump on these websites, you can put your search for your suburban or postcode or whatever, and what it does, it brings up all the childcare centres around your area. Then you can click on any of them and it will take you to almost like a little mini website that'll just give you information in regards to, so it's up to the childcare centre if they want to put their fees on there type thing. So, but generally it'll have their fees, it'll have all their vacancy information. So you can click on there, you can click on the age groups of the centre. It will also tell you about their ASEQA rating and that where they are under the government rating system, the size of the centre, and how it actually works is that centres, it is a free listing, centres can upgrade their subscription. So you might find some of the centres have a lot more information on there because obviously they're paying a subscription for that. And you can actually also send through an inquiry online through that website. So
wow, that's amazing because, like back in the day when I was sort of, starting out, that wasn't available as such.
No, you pretty much had to go through the phone book or even just go through a list and ring them all and try and find out information.
Wow, so that's great. That's a great website. So
yeah, so like Emily was great with providing so much information in regards to, you know, those sites. So even jump on there. Like I said, there's even some great resources on there for families that are looking into childcare centres and explaining how the, you know, other systems work, whether it can be to do with the ratings, where it can be, you know, checklists and things like that as well. So, yeah, I think that, you know,
we'll have this information linked to our website.
Yes,
so
yes.
Please have a look at educatordiaries.com.
Yep. Have a look on there, and we'll have the links on there to Toddle and Care for Kids. So moving on from that, anyway. So what we want to hope to like get through today's lesson is to give you a really comprehensive idea of things to think about and things to also ask when you're going through these centres, and hopefully going for visits and having a look for yourself as well. So
to get yourself in the right headspace, when you think about, okay, my child's at this age now, or your child's at younger than the age of 3 to 5 that you're looking at for childcare. It just depends what the reason behind why you want.
That's right.
Childcare. Is it because of work reasons? Is it because your child's bored and it needs to have that social interaction? There's lots of, everyone's got their own reasons of why they want to go to childcare. So, and that probably leads us to location.
So whether or not you decide to actually find something close to home, or I've known people that will choose a childcare centre that's close to a grandparent. So if the child does get sick, it's easier for the grandparent to come and pick the child up. Or do you want it closer to your work? So, when you leave work, you're closer there.
That's exactly right.
So, so there's all different reasons what areas you're looking at and why. And just to see whether or not that service can also meet your care time requirements, because majority of centres are open from 7 till 6. There's some that are open from 6:30 to 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night. So just having a look, because obviously if you're working in a city location and you're an hour's drive away from home, you've got to think about those to and from work, how long it's going to take you to get there, having the child in the car for how many hours, half an hour, an hour, or what have you. So,
there are long days for these young little kids, but you've got to do what you've got to do. And like you said, sometimes just for work reasons that you need to have these services that open up early for you.
And even also looking at if the centre does close, like some centres might choose to close during school holidays, others might choose to close at Christmas time, or do they, like what happens there at Christmas time, more and more centres are choosing not to close. They'll only close for the public holidays.
Yeah, right.
So again, as a parent, you might go, well, that's great because I have to work through the holidays. Or you might say, well, no, we generally, have a family holiday at Christmas time. But just be aware that if that centre's open, you will still have to pay those fees to hold that spot as well. So
right, okay. So
different things to consider.
Back in the day, we closed. We started off by closing for 2 weeks, and then I think it was about a few years.
That's like 4 weeks.
A few years in, we went, okay, no, we're going to close for 4 weeks because I need a holiday.
I think the educators sometimes need that break as
well.
I
remember having parents saying, "Oh, Maria, how long are you closed for?" And that was for me as an educator and as a parent. That 4 weeks was so important. But as you say, some parents only just have just a Christmas and New Year break, which is probably 1.5, 2 weeks the most. And then they really need their kids to be back into care.
Yeah, that's right as well. So you've just that's something that you've got to find that's going to suit your family and your family needs.
Yes, that's right.
So even looking at even sometimes before you go in and visit, like I said, on the Care for Kids or Toddle website, you can compare fees across centres. On those sites as well, they do have a childcare subsidy calculator. So we'll talk a little bit about the subsidy as well. For those of you who don't know, the government supply will allow you to apply for what they call a childcare subsidy. So it's a fee relief system. So it's based off your income, your combined income, as well as your activity. So depending, obviously, the more you earn, the lower your percentage is going to be. So therefore, you won't get as much money off your fees. Yep. Then also it comes into your activity. So if you're working full-time, your subsidy should then cover you for X amount of hours, like 50 hours over the week of the childcare centre. Whereas if you're not working or you're only working a few, part-time, then that subsidy will only cover a couple of days care. So you might want your child to go 5 days, but if you don't work enough, then you'll have to pay full fees on those days that your hours don't allow you.
Oh, wow.
But
okay.
again, it can be a little bit confusing. So we'll pop a link on our website in relation to the Family Assistance
Yes,
page where you can
well,
find out some more information.
That's so important, because over the years, childcare fees have just gone through the roof. But for the right reasons, let me tell you. I know there's always the talk about why is childcare so expensive, but those educators that are working there and what's provided for the children, the money that the parents are paying sometimes doesn't weigh the cost that's involved.
No, it's that's true. And, again, our educators are definitely pushing for higher wages, which they deserve
yes.
and they need. And when you actually break down, because let's face it, majority of families do get the childcare subsidy. When you break down per hour how much the fees are, it's actually pretty reasonable.
So
and
roughly, how much is someone paying now here in Australia? Roughly per day.
Well, the full fees. You might look at the full fees will be like I've had families. The full fees are around 110, 120, depending on the suburbs. Could be $150, $160 a day. The full fee. Whereas out of that, sometimes you have families paying, $40 maybe. So if you break that up over 11 hours of care that the centre's open, or even, the 8 hours that the parents come, like I said, again, we'll get into what the childcare centre supplies and what parents have to bring. Yeah, it, if you had to find a babysitter per hourly rate, you probably wouldn't be able to find one.
No.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, so when you're in there talking to, try and make it an appointment or not. I'd quite often say to parents, you know what, if I was looking at a childcare centre, I would just turn up.
Randomly,
Yep, and see how accommodating they would be. Are they willing to, sometimes they can't show you through at certain times, and that's fine. You turn up and just see how friendly they are and say, oh, look, I'm so sorry, we can't show you through right now. Can you make an appointment and we can bring you back through it another time?
I believe that initial contact straight away, you'll have a feeling straight away whether or not they're inviting for you in order to put your name down to make an appointment.
Yeah.
You'll get that feeling straight away, which is take note of that, because that's,
Yeah. So these are all things that and then when you do go back for your appointment, there's lots of little things that you can have a look at throughout the centre, and ask them, again, what's the procedures, if you're running late to pick your child up, is there late fees? Generally, to be honest with you, there are late fees because those educators will get paid overtime to stay back. And also, does the centre meet your cultural or religious needs and that? So
and also another thing, do they offer orientation programs for the children to come
transition in? Yeah. So sometimes you might do a half day for the first few days.
Yep.
I would generally like to have a family, mum, dad, and the child come to visit the centre for an hour or so before they're even enrolled, so they can sit down. Therefore, you can actually go through and really have a really good conversation. As a parent, you can sit there and just watch as your child can go off and play and then come back to you. Sometimes when you're just doing a waiting list or going through for a tour, you won't really get that opportunity for your child to really interact, as well as what they would if they're just sitting there for an hour while they're playing in the program and stuff like that. So
I remember we used to have that. Remember they used to come in for half a day, just as an orientation, because at the same time, it's got to. As a parent, I knew that it was. The parent has to feel comfortable of walking away and leaving their child.
Yeah.
And just giving them those few little hours just for that little transitioning.
Well, if the child can come as many times as they can before their actual start date where mum or dad are going to leave them and go, then the more interaction that they have with those staff and the centre, the more, the happier they're going to be.
Keeping in mind, not all childcare centres do this. Well, when we're talking childcare, we're talking kindies, we're talking preschools, childcare. An environment where you leave your child in the hands of other people. So I think just providing that a little bit of extra sort of, opportunity for parents to have that is huge as a parent, speaking as a parent, and...
and that gives you the chance to really sit back as a parent and say, just have a look around. Is the atmosphere relaxed? Are the children happy? Are the staff happy?
The staff interacting with the children.
100%. And does like the educators seem interested not in only the children that are there, but in your child? Like, I know that I would actually say that my educators were awesome. They'd always come up and make conversations with the parents, with the child, and invite the child to come and join them, to play and stuff like that, because that's just, that's a big thing, that you need to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah, like, and I mean, again, too, I think we were discussing this before, that the person who initially sees you, whether it be a director, whether it be a manager, whether it be,
the room leaders.
As such. But the person in charge, I think if staff see that the directors are taking that step or managers are taking that step, it becomes a harmonious sort of feeling within the room, and everybody sort of seems to take action that way. And I think it's important for when you've got a parent that's coming in, feeling anxious about leaving their child there, it's so important that they're made...
They've got to make that connection
somewhere.
That connection,
and the parent will
connection.
And the parent will pick up on that. So, and as a parent, you need to keep your eyes open and have that feeling when you walk in.
Yeah, have a look at the rooms. Are they organised? Are they clean? Like, I know that's a big thing, the childcare smell. Does the environment smell fresh and clean? Yeah. Trust me, if you've walked in after a nappy change, it's probably not going to smell clean. A few times that's happened, I'm like going, oh my gosh, okay, I'm so sorry. We've just changed a nappy. Nothing much you can do about that. You can't really mask that smell. But
those days.
Yeah, so, all the other educators coming up and introducing themselves to you during these tours as well. So, so I guess the first thing is your first impression. And then moving on from that, you can, like we mentioned a bit before about a CEQA. So all childcare centres do go through an assessment and rating process. And that's so, they're a,
so therefore, with the ratings that they get, which you can identify when you have a look on their sites, they'll either get working towards, meeting, or exceeding. Yep. Any centres that get exceeding
can apply for that excellent rating.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, this is something new. So this is all different from back when I was having the kindergarten, but. Yeah.
And it is changing all the time. Like, this is honestly, to keep up with this, there's always different things happening with the assessment and rating process, but not to harp on too much on it, because to be honest with you, it does depend on the assessor that you get on the day. It depends on your educators on the day, if someone's away or if a child has a meltdown. It is, don't get me wrong, it's great that all childcare centres have to meet a certain standard, but centres can also, like, put it on the day, or things just might not go well on the day. So you'd really, like, those centres that are meeting, that's still a fantastic achievement. And like I said, it's one of those things that,
keep in mind when you're going to have a look at a centre and you look at the rating, you think, oh wow, they've got excellent rating, and you've got a centre that perhaps you were interested in, and they've only got sort of
the meeting one.
The meeting one. Well, you've got to think about that. This is where you've got to
weigh up what's important to you.
That's exactly right, because you can walk into an excellent centre, but you walk in and you just don't get that feeling. You get a very clinical, sterile. Is that where you want your child?
Yeah, they've done everything, like technically by the book, but
perhaps the child centre they got meeting, maybe they spend more time with the children than worrying about all the paperwork they had to tick off for accreditation. So, there's no right or wrong, but there's that guide there for you to have a look at.
Yeah, and that's right. If they're working towards, you can even ask what happened, like why are you working towards? Sometimes it's those new centres that have opened that haven't gone through assessment and rating yet as well. So, but that's something just, you can
I'd be interested to know around the world, I'm sure every country's got their own sort of ratings that they need for childcare centres and licensing and so forth, but that'll be interesting to know also. We're talking basically here in Australia,
that's right,
what the standard is, the
national
required.
Standards here.
But it'd be great to see if anyone wants to comment. If you're around the world, just let us know what system there's in place for childcare centres. If you're looking for a childcare centre, where do you look it up? That'd be great.
Yeah, so in regards to, like, also another good thing is, as you're first walking into a centre, have a look at the security. Does the centre seem safe? Are you able just to walk in and walk into their backyard? Are you able to walk into the front door and no one stop you, from walking in?
Well, there you go. Alarm bells then straight away.
Yeah. So did someone stop and greet you at the door? Like, those sort of kind of little things is something that, just to have a little bit of a think about as well. So, and then also, a bit of the health and safety thing. So just keeping in mind, if your child does have an accident, whether it be an accident as in falling over, what's the procedures for that?
Yeah.
Generally, do they call you? I know at my centre, any time a child fell and even hit their head, that would be an immediate phone call. And 9 times out of 10, don't get me wrong, the child is fine, just to let mum and dad know, listen, they've had a fall, they've knocked their head, we're watching them, there's not a bruise, there's not this or whatever, but just so the family's informed of that as well.
That's so important, yes.
So just to have those conversations with them in regards to, what the procedures are.
Yeah, and again, that leads us to, if a child being sick, if your child's sick, they ask the question, what happens? What's the procedure in that respect? With administering medication or giving you phone calls, if they can't reach you, what happens?
Yeah, so again, keep in mind, a lot of families don't realise that if your child does get sick at the centre, if they've got a temperature, they can't return for 24 hours. So a lot of parents do get a little bit upset like this, and well, I've got to work, they've had Panadol, they're fine, or they're just teething. As educators, we're not doctors. So if a child does have a temperature, and it could very well be that they're teething, but we don't know that. We can't see what's going on inside their little bodies. And as you would know, children do get sick when they go to childcare. I used to actually say to people, I don't make the sickness at the childcare centre. So someone has brought that illness in.
Exactly.
So a lot of people go, they got sick from here, and I'll be like, well, it's not me. I didn't give them that. So just keep in mind that your child might be one that brings an illness in as well. It doesn't always, happen. It's not like the centre creates the illness. But
well, if everyone works together, then you eliminate, of that. And look, when you're sick at work, and as a parent, you say to yourself, right, okay, when I'm sick at work, I don't go to work, but I still have to pay.
Well, that's just it, and that's a big thing too. So if you do miss a day for whatever reason, whether it be sickness, whether it be holiday, or you just want them to have a day off, you still do have to pay your childcare fees. Some centres might have a different policy to that, but that is quite a standard policy across the board with most things like that as well. So, and just keep in mind, all staff do have to have their CPR first aid certificates. There always has to be somebody at the centre at all times that holds a first aid certificate. So, even like I said, we're not doctors, we're trained in first aid and things like that. But, just keep that in mind as well.
Another important sort of factor to look into when you're at the centre, which I think it's across the board anyway, I know here in Australia, is the sun protection policy, which is standard, I believe. That's just sort of, but asking them, do they provide the sunscreen? Do I bring the sunscreen? I know children with different skin allergies, parents provide their own sunscreen.
Yeah, generally they will as well. So, and then there's all different, most centres are what they call sun smart centres. So they'll have a strict sun smart policy as to when the children can play outside. Again, as parents, keep in mind, children do have to have their shoulders covered. Those strappy dresses and singlet tops are not classified as sun safe clothing.
Yeah.
So just make sure that they're dressed appropriately as well. And some centres supply hats. Other centres, ask the child to bring their own hat, obviously.
So that probably brings us to asking the question, what do I have to bring?
Yeah, so again, a lot of centres will give you like a little information booklet on all that sort of stuff. So little things that you can ask as well, because this could come into, this could also factor into the fees. So some centres might charge more because they supply nappies and they supply wipes and they supply formula. I'll be honest with you, at my centre we didn't, because for me as a parent, that was a really personal preference. I wanted my child in certain branded nappies because other nappies react, like Paris's skin would react terribly to anything cheaper than Huggies at the time. Same with formula. All different parents have different formulas that their children are on. So just ask them, do they supply that? Do they supply the bed sheets, or do you bring your own as well?
As well as food, whether, it's cooked there or it's catered for.
Yeah, I know in New South Wales, majority of long daycare centres do have do supply food as well. So, but you're saying in Queensland it's not as...
In Queensland, there are lots of centres that the children bring their own lunch boxes with food. So it just depends. It depends, and also then that works upon the fees that you're paying.
Yeah.
And also to cultural, you've got some children who don't eat I mean, that's all changed since I've had the childcare centre, because we used to provide the meals, and we catered for children with allergies and so forth. But how does that go with now in childcare? With
Yeah, it's pretty much the same sort of thing as well. Yeah, like cultural. We'll see. The menu should be multicultural anyway. So I know, you have a lot of centres that have their cooks in there, so they'll obviously cater differently. There's also the Kids Gourmet Food Company that a lot of childcare centres use, so they actually supply the foods. They're actually really good as far as allergies or those cultural requirements, because parents can pretty much tick a form and those children will actually have separate meals provided for them as well. So, and you know that they're safe. There's no cross-contamination and things like that. So, so when it comes to allergies, most centres now are what they called allergy aware. They're not nut-free or anything like that, because you cannot guarantee 100%.
No, that's exactly right.
You'll find that a lot of centres say that they are allergy aware, not allergy-free or whatever. So, but making sure that, do you bring a drink bottle? How does your child access water throughout the day as well? So whether or not they have bubblers, or does the centre provide, a drink at certain times? Children should be able to access water at all times. Like we did have at my last centre, we had like the drink bottle trolleys, and they were always washed and cleaned after after lunches and stuff like that. But
what did we do? I think did we have cups with the jugs, didn't we?
Yeah, and we had the bubbler outside.
We had the bubbler outside
at that centre. So because that's a really big thing as well, that they can access
the water. During the day.
Change of clothes, making sure that in those change of season months, making sure that you put whether
extra clothes, but also too, when they have water play, or have extra clothes in their bags.
And stuff like that.
So just have a chat with them about their procedures with what to bring. So it gives you a clear identity of what. And
label everything.
Exactly.
Absolutely everything. So moving on, when you do your waiting list, or your tours, I should say, you should either have the appointment with the director, manager, or the room leader.
As such. Normally there is a directed person who does the waiting list, unless the director's away.
That's right.
On that day. But
so see what they're like. Ask how available they are for conversations of an afternoon, mornings, and things like that. Are they available to talk to you, or is the best person maybe that room leader that sees your child on all throughout the day to talk to them? Also, ask about the staffing roster. Is someone from your child's room available of a morning and afternoon? We'd always try and do our rosters so there was always someone from each room in the morning and afternoon.
Yeah, because that's very important as a follow-up of, what's happening during the day with the children that they were with, because nothing worse than walking in and you say to them, how were they today? And they go, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's so it's important that you ask that question. Actually, that's really important. And along those lines too, walking around the centre and speaking to the person, whoever it is, maybe the director, asking about child ratios.
Yeah, so the ratios, just for those who don't know, so in the nursery, the baby's room, it's 1 to 4. So 1 staff member to 4 children, 0 to 2.
Yep.
And then when you go to your 2 to 3 year olds, it's 1 to 5. And then this is in New South Wales, so they do actually vary, I should say. And then in the preschool room, it's 1 to 10, whereas some other states it's 1 to 11 in those rooms as well.
Oh, okay, right.
But again, those babies ratios, you want to hope that there's an extra staff member in those rooms, because
that's so important. That's huge. And I know it's a very hard decision for a parent to leave a newborn baby in a childcare centre and not 1 to 4. That's it
is a hard room, and I think it's really important that hopefully most centres do have those those floater staff that move into those areas, into those rooms when needed as well. So
we used to have a floater that used to go across from. I only had children from 2 to 5, but we had a floater that would just go from both rooms. And you probably had the same thing at your centre?
Yeah, well, I was lucky that at the last centre that I actually had an extra staff member in each room because they would then cover breaks and programming time and things like that. But they're also there to help out when needed. And so even like with the qualifications, so most centres, depending on the size of the centres, it'll depend on the qualifications of staff. But generally, all staff have to, a trainee or a certificate 3. Then they go to diploma and then early childhood teacher. Right. So just, that's something you could ask as well is, what are the qualifications in my child's room and like what are the turnover of staff? Because we know at the moment, again, there is that bit of a crisis in childcare centres where they are, many educators are burnt out and they are leaving. So turnover, once upon a time, you wouldn't get turnover in in some centres, whereas unfortunately now it's actually really common, even in the really good centres, that they're leaving because they've just had enough of the industry. It's not so much about the centre. It's just that, So, and having a look, is there a balance of men, women, older, younger, educators there? So,
that's a question that I remember when I was building the childcare centre. That I had people calling in to put their name on the waiting list, and I had one mother. She said to me that was really important for her was. Do you have children? That's the first question she asked me over the phone. And I said no. And she went, does anybody else that's going to be working there have children? And at first, being so young,
like, oh, how rude.
I was, thinking I'm qualified. And why are we asking this? I work in childcare. But I understand, and I understood that after I had children. And, I was very fortunate that my mum, we both owned the kindergarten together, and she was going to be there every day. And because I said to her that my mother would be there as, as a grandmother figure and she'd be doing all the cooking and the administration, she just went straight away. She said, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I only understood that when I had my first child. And I think, you know what, that's so important.
Yeah, just to have the mix. And you know what, like younger educators bring a great vibe and you cannot fault them. They've got that, sometimes it's the yin and the yang. Like some of the older educators might be like, oh, I'm a bit done, but they've got that nurturing, nature to them as well, that instinct, that's natural instinct. Right. Whereas the younger educators, again, they bring something. And so do male educators. Like I was fortunate enough at my last centre to have 2 male ECTs, and the vibe was awesome.
More and more, I think, as the years have gone on, more of the males have come into the childcare industry, and I think it's amazing. I think it's fantastic to have that mix up because there are some great guys out there that just interact. I mean, look, you were just telling me now about your son Lincoln, who's training young children in football, and that's fantastic. Like I think it's just that interaction that kids need. It's not just always females.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's an important thing to ask. And like I said, as a parent, when I was a parent, I understood why that mother asked that question. Because it's very important.
Yeah, that's true. And like again, looking at the environment, like have a look at the whole environment. Have a look at the backyard. Have a look at the rooms. Have a look at the setups and things like that. Sometimes people go in and go, oh, wow, this centre looks amazing because it's brand new and it's got all the bells and whistles and it's got all the big shiny stuff in the backyard. I remember at my last centre, one of the the department came out just for a spot check, and the lady actually said to me, your backyard is beautiful, it's natural, it's just has got so many natural elements. Don't fill it with, plastic and toys and things like that. And the children would just run and play. If we were like going out just for a quick run because it looked like it was going to like rain or something like that, and we didn't have a whole lot of toys out in the environment, the children would just play. They would just create things, and they were so they're always coming up with games and what have you without having to overfill it. So sometimes it's not all about the resources.
No.
It's about just how the environment and the feel of the environment is really important.
Well, I remember when I had the kindergarten, which one positive thing, and like you're saying, it's not all about the bells and whistles and, who's got the latest equipment and so forth, but it was just purely that once we walked from the front door, from the foyer into the playroom, we could see right at the backyard because we had glass windows right through.
Yep.
So therefore it just looked so inviting, and just seeing everyone's being as a part, as a whole, all together.
Yeah.
Because the vision.
Or the supervision points as well. Like, you could actually see the whole yard. You could see inside. You could stand on the veranda and see inside outside environment.
So when you walk in, see if if just the way that there's set up of the backyards and the classrooms and so forth, and if that's what something that you feel when we look at safety, and again we spoke about that.
Like I said, it is, don't get me wrong, like the resources in childcare centres at the moment are amazing and their setups are amazing, but it doesn't have to be all brand new stuff. It can still be, recycled materials and things like that. Obviously, you want to make sure that they're not broken and dirty and things like that. But, and are the shelves accessible for the children just to grab toys off them? You don't want a centre where everything's up high that they can't reach, because a lot of the time it's about children initiating their own play and grabbing things from the shelves and just, creating play. So, and which sort of kind of brings us to, the programs and things like that. So, all centres should be really, like if they're getting childcare subsidy, it should be following the early years learning framework. Right. So, how that sort of kind of works is that, the staff are all trained in making sure that they're meeting all these like areas of development and things like that as well. So, which you'll see that a lot of the times on all their, on their learning stories and what have you. A lot of centres nowadays, which was a little bit different than back in the day, there's all these apps now that most childcare centres run with. So it's almost like a little mini Facebook. So you might you'll download whatever the app is that the centre uses. It'll have all your fee information on there. It'll have all their, the child's sleeping and eating routines. It'll have photos on there.
So that's a way of communicating with the parent.
That's a massive way of communicating. Again, some apps will allow you to put, 1,000 photos on during the day. What I used to say to families as well, just be mindful is the more information on these apps, which are great, don't get me wrong, is less time. That the educator is with the child and that. So, so what sort of kind of happens there is, like I said, they're really good. They've got all the information on there for you, and you can just ask the centre what app they actually use as well and how they do it. So because that's a bit of an individual thing, and like I said, the apps all vary. And
they'll give you a reflection on how your child was that day, and
a summary.
You can talk to them at home about it, which is great.
And the beauty of the apps is that your partner, or whoever you want to be, on that app, therefore they get to see all those photos and learning stories, and it's almost like a collection there for you. And generally, like I said, it'll have the program on there or some form of the program. If the program's a paper program that's on the wall, generally it'll say something about it in the daily reflection on the app. So,
well, it looks like we've covered lots of areas of how we can choose a childcare centre for your child. I think, like Chantel said, we've got on our website, we'll put some links down of the different
the Care for Kids and Toddle website, the ASEQA website, the Family Assistance one when it comes to the childcare subsidy.
That's important.
But I think the big gist that, looking at all this stuff that we've just spoken about, the biggest thing is your heart and how you feel and how you connect to that centre. Yes,
I was about to say that. Just, just walk in. Just walk in, stand there and just take it all in, and you'll know exactly in your heart where your child belongs.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just that feeling you can't sort of,
and the sense of community that the centre creates as well. So, like, even some centres, really go above and beyond. That was the other thing, actually, the Facebook pages. Some centres have fantastic Facebook pages, so you can get on there and have a look at the sense of community that they provide, whether or not it be through Mother's Day events or Christmas events and things like that. So, again, I think that's the biggest thing coming back full circle is community is the biggest thing. So,
Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for listening. And just before we go, I'm going to leave you with this inspirational quote. Treat people kindly and the universe will return the kindness to you. Have a wonderful day. Thanks a lot, everyone, for listening. Bye.
Ciao, ciao. See yous.